Hello, hello. Welcome back to Peak Northwest, an outdoors and travel podcast by the Oregonian and Oregon Live, dedicated to the adventure and exploration of our beautiful Pacific Northwest. I'm Jamie Hale.
And I'm Chiara Profena. Together we take you to some of the most beautiful and interesting destinations in our region, discussing where to go, what to do, and places to see. And today we're highlighting a nonprofit that is dedicated to getting people out on the water.
The group is called Diversify Whitewater, which is a national organization dedicated to increasing access to whitewater rafting, kayaking, and other paddle sports to underserved communities. And this summer, they organized some sold-out events around Portland. I guess sold out is not quite the right word if they're no cost, but some full events around Portland and the Columbia River Gorge, helping break down some of the barriers that people may face in accessing paddle sports.
That's right. And here to tell us more about Diversify Whitewater and their local events is Lily Durkee, the founder and president of Diversity Whitewater, and Callie Kurtz, a volunteer coordinator for the Pacific Northwest Progression.
Thanks so much for coming on, both of you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Well, so I think to get things started, why don't we start with you, Lily? When and how did this organization get started?
Yeah, for sure. Diversify Whitewater was started in the summer of 2020 during the Black Lives Matter movement. One of the paddling brands, Immersion Research, put out this statement saying that they fully support diversity in paddling, and they would be happy to support anyone who's trying to increase diversity in paddling. And I remember thinking, like, who actually is doing that? And had the idea to start an organization whose mission was to increase diversity in paddling. And so we started by holding 2 free paddling events in northern Colorado, which is where I live and where we started. And our first 2 events were in northern Colorado, and the main barrier that I wanted to remove was cost. And so we had volunteers come out and bring extra boats that they had and rafts that they were able to guide. And so we held our first event on this whitewater stretch on our local river, the Cache-la-Poudre River near Fort Collins, Colorado. And we sent out we had an announcement about the event, and we had a lot of interest, both from people who wanted to help and people who wanted to participate. And we basically had no negative responses to this effort. And that was just like a really amazing sign that this community was ready for a program like this and for events like this to happen. And so we held 2 events that summer, one that was on whitewater, which was a free whitewater rafting event on the Poudre, and a second that was on calm water on a reservoir in Loveland, Colorado, where we had kayaks, stand-up paddleboards, canoes, and rafts. And we had people get to try out lots of different kinds of boats in a really safe environment. And what we found that summer was that people really appreciated the opportunity to try something new in a group where everyone, or most of the people there, were also people of color. I think it can be pretty nerve-wracking to show up at a new space to try something you maybe had never tried before, and be the only one who is not white. And so it was a really beautiful community that we were able to create in those 2 events. And since then, we got really great feedback and interest from across the country of other people like Callie wanting to hold events like this in their areas. And so we formed a relationship with some volunteers in the Pacific Northwest and also in the DC area and in the Northeast, in the Western Massachusetts area. And we were able to hold events across the country in 2021. And since then, we've programmed with these folks and also with other organizations. So it's nonprofits, local rafting companies and outfitters, and just awesome individuals like Callie to hold events all over the country. And our events are always free and are always open to everyone, with an emphasis on Black, Indigenous, people of color, the LGBTQ plus community, and other underserved groups.
And so, Callie, you kind of hopped in here after things started to expand. Tell us a bit about how you joined. What made you want to be a part of this group?
Yeah, so it was really exciting in 2020 as Lidley and folks started Diversify Whitewater. And for those of us that had been in the community of Whitewater for a long time, who really valued the diversity within Whitewater, for myself, a lot of it had been male for a really long time. And so, we had seen the growth of women in the sport, especially in the Pacific Northwest. And we're really excited about seeing, more folks of color involved in kayaking and whitewater. And so saw Diversify Whitewater sprout up and immediately started volunteering in our local programs here in the Northwest. So we had days in Seattle and in Portland. And sort of through that, it was amazing turnouts. Folks were really stoked and excited. And that sort of led to the development of the progression, because those were all one day or weekend events. And folks were like, we love this. But it still really wasn't a lot to get folks fully immersed, because whitewater is a complex sport that needs a lot of access. And for myself, I had the privilege of family getting me access, but for many, there isn't that access, especially in our communities of color that have historically been left out of outdoor spaces for a lot of historical reasons. And so this was an opportunity to say, like, hey, what if we created something that would allow, a progression over time, over the course of the summer, to really help folks get supported in both the sport and the activity, but also in the community, to be able to keep doing this and change our sport into the more positive ways.
Hey, Callie, you're talking about the progression, this idea of a progression over the course of the summer. What exactly does that look like? What is that? What do you mean when you say that?
Yeah, so when I say that, I mean that we start with a lot of folks, rivers are a space that they haven't had a lot of access to, and water is even a space that they haven't had access to. And so for the progression, what we mean is we really start folks from the very beginning. So we assume folks have little to no experience on water even. We do ask that folks, we check in sort of on swimming skills. And if folks don't have swimming skills, then we connect them with different swimming programs across the region to get them some basic swimming skills. But once they have basic swimming skills, then we start from the beginning and get everybody organized around gear, as well as location. And we start with, the very beginning of like, hey, here is just flat water, come to the water, we'll help outfit you. And then over the course of roughly 6 weeks, we move folks through sort of like different learning aspects of whitewater kayaking and of water and of the sport, so that folks can like step by step each week learn more and gain more skills. And then by the end, are running class 2 whitewater in hardshell whitewater kayaks. And so it's pretty awesome.
That's great. Just starting people off from no skills, no background in kayaking, and then being able to just like slowly work over it over the course of a couple weeks. It seems like a great introduction for a lot of people. And especially y'all are emphasizing a lot about this connection to BIPOC people and underserved communities. And there are a lot of barriers when it comes to getting outdoors and being active. So can you tell us a bit about what kinds of barriers these communities face and how you really help people break through? And you can start with you, Lily.
Yeah, for sure. This was one of the questions that came up really early in our founding. And we came up with 2 groups. So there's material barriers and financial barriers. So those are things like Callie was mentioning, like access to gear. For those of you who don't know much about whitewater kayaking, like not only do you need a boat, but you also need a PFD, a personal flotation device, or life jacket, a spray skirt, which is the thing that keeps the water out of your kayak. You need a certified whitewater helmet. And given the temperature of the water, you also need like different kinds of clothing that will keep you warm and dry. And so in Colorado, it's really helpful for beginners because all of our water is snow melt to have a dry suit, which is, so all of those things combined is like $2,000 to $3,000, depending on like if you buy them new. And then you need to like get instruction for how to use all of these new toys that you've obtained. So it's like a really big upfront investment in cost, and also you need like access to instruction or friends who can help teach you. But if you aren't in the community, yet you don't have access to those things in general. And so, so those are the kind of material costs. And then in addition to the gear and the instruction, you also need to get to the river, and you need to get all those things to the river. So you need a vehicle that will not only carry you, but also transport this like large thing of plastic that you recently obtained for $1,000. And so you need, and then you need friends to go with you, because kayaking is not really safe to do alone. And it's not only is it safe, but you also need to set up shuttles generally, so that you can get back to your car either at the beginning and at the end, at the end. So there's a lot of things that you need to be a whitewater kayaker in particular. And so that are just material and financial. And so then that's one bucket that we came up with. And then the other one is cultural barriers. And so those are some of the things that I talked about earlier, about your feelings of belonging, feelings of connection to community, feelings of belonging, and feelings of safety. And so depending on where you live and the access to the bodies of water, it might be in rural, predominantly white areas where people might not be super stoked to have all of these people accessing the river right near their homes anyway. And so if it's already kind of a hostile environment, you might not feel safe. If all the other people at the river are not people who look like you or have the same kind of cultural background, you might not feel like you belong. And these feelings of alienation and often sometimes even like not feeling safe are big emotional barriers to wanting to come to this kind of activity.
Yeah, so I mean the outings themselves, I know that Callie, you mentioned like there's a progression, they look different for different people, there's like a process there, but generally speaking, what does an outing look like? I mean, how many people are we talking about? What level of white water are we talking about? Like, paint a picture for us of what you might be doing with folks.
Yeah, so we really look at like how do we break down those barriers, and we start by picking some rivers that we all access regularly in the region. So yesterday actually we were out on a river day, we call them, and we were on the Clackamas River. And so a group is selected each year. So we do an application in the spring where folks can apply. And that just gives us a sense to like check in and make sure folks are really committed and excited about this and are a good fit and like have and want to be a part of it. And then we pick 10 to 14 folks to be part of our cohorts. So last year was our first year. We only had one cohort. This year we have two cohorts, which are our Puget Sound and our Columbia Gorge cohort. And we specifically chose bodies of water to name them after because, right, another historical way we separate is by arbitrary human borders and where like water can be pathways, right, to connect us. So we, connect them, and then folks get a lot of information from me in an email that says like, hey, we're going to meet here. These are the things you need to bring. I also talk with folks on the phone, right? We like really set it up. Simultaneously, we organize with a bunch of local paddlers who volunteer their time. So all of us are volunteers that come and offer their gear and like their instruction as well as just safety out on the river. We all sort of pick a place. So like yesterday on the Clackamas, it was our third river day in the Columbia Gorge cohort this year. It was the first day we were on rapids. They were like the beginning first level rapids. So we all met in the morning and we went over sort of our safety talks, which we do every day. These now had been talked about 3 different times, right? Because we've had 3 other days on water already. Some of that moving, but no rapids. And then, we go through sort of like, hey, what to expect today, answer questions. We also do like a lot of community building. A big piece of, going outside and being with others is, finding connection, right? Creating that emotional safety. So, we're sharing stories, we're talking about different things that are happening for us. And then, we get on the water and we get to experience the beautiful places that are in our region. And we work through rapids, we kayak, we do some instruction, some playing. Yesterday we saw a baby eagle catch a fish and was like throwing it around on the bank. So we stopped and watched that for a while. And we just really enjoy each other's company while also getting to like learn this new sport. Messing up is part of learning a new skill. And so we do a lot of that, and laughter and fun, as well as, practicing skills so that our next time, which will be coming up here in a couple weeks, will be on the Klickitat River. We'll have even bigger whitewater and bigger rapids. So we're slowly building over the course to bigger and bigger whitewater so that folks can, at the end of the progression, feel connected, one, to the community, have new friends, have new folks they can go with, both in the cohort and with the volunteers, as well as know a few rivers in the region, and also, have the skills to be able to navigate. We get up to class 2, which there's up to a class 6, although only class 5 is navigable, over the course of the whitewater.
And so you have this cohort of people that you're taking out, many of which have maybe never, been on whitewater before. So tell us a bit about those reactions from people. Are there any like moments that you witness that are like really like, wow, this is like what we're here to do?
Yeah, like yesterday when we got through the first rapid where everybody had gotten through, everybody had like stayed upright the whole time and had a great time. And we all met in an eddy, which is just a quiet part of the river. And everybody was like giggling and laughing and talking to each other around like, oh my gosh, did you see me do this? And wow, I made it through that. And like there was just such an energy and such a joy. And in such busy lives and in so many different ways, like here we all are, a group of humans connecting in a beautiful place with lots of laughter, lots of joy. And you just feel that like stoke build as folks get to experience that like adrenaline rush of the first successful rapid and feeling like, hey, I did something that I never thought I could do. And that's something that, a lot of folks look at like the part of the river and there's like, no way I can do that. And then they get that skill or they get that rapid or they punch through that wave, and the joy and excitement and just drive too to then like continue to be a part of it is really awesome.
Well, maybe you just answered this question, Callie, but I was going to ask Lily, like, you could do the same kind of program on flatwater kayaking. You could do it as a hiking group. You could do it as any number of things. Why whitewater? What is it about that experience that you felt like was important to bring to these communities?
That's a great question. I think Callie also alluded to this earlier, just like how we were so lucky to get into this sport. It takes a lot of pieces in your life to align. And so like Callie, like my mom was a kayaker and she enrolled me in summer camp. And so I had access to friends and instruction and gear, and we had the financial means to pay for summer camp. And it's been something that I learned as a kid, and then I've just been able to do for the rest of my life. And well, I hope to do it for the rest of my life, and I've done it until the age that I am now. And I think there's a lot of amazing things about the activity. Not only is like I feel so lucky to have the opportunity to do it. It's hard to get into, and I think it's one of the most magical activities to experience for many of the reasons that Callie was talking about. It's a connection to nature. It's like you directly in contact with a body of water. And because it's moving water and because you're so in it, like you're always holding onto your paddle, you're navigating rocks and riffles and weird eddy lines and currents, that you're completely immersed in the activity. And with the people around you, and there's no way for you to get on a phone, for example. And a lot of our river canyons don't even have cell service. And so it's like a complete connection to nature and to the people around you where there's absolutely no other distractions. And in fact, if you are distracted in kayaking, that's when it kind of can get dangerous. And so like if you're thinking about your work assignment or your upcoming exam or some talk you have to give later in the week, you're going to be distracted and you're going to make mistakes. And so you learn that it's something that deserves 100% attention. And it's an amazing thing that it deserves 100% of your attention. And so it's like all of your being is in the river with the people, with your community, and the joy that is able to generate that Callie was explaining is so true. And it's like, it's really magical. And so that was why we're called Diversify Whitewater. I will say that we do a lot of our events on calm water. It's the best place to learn, and it's a great way to start. And so our end goal is to grow the whitewater community, but I think getting people in boats on any body of water is also just equally precious.
And so I can imagine a lot of people being part of this community. It's probably very heartwarming to one, just be able to meet people, and then also just very cool to learn in this environment. Do you get a lot of people like returning through the progression, or is it like a one and done kind of thing?
It's actually really cool this year. So last year was the first year of the progression after just those one-off events. And several of folks I saw year after year at the one-off events in both Seattle and Portland area. And yeah, so last year was our first progression. And the whole point of the end of the progression is we like create connection with the rest of the community so you can stay involved and keep kayaking, and we all keep going out together. And this year, actually, 3 of our volunteers are folks that are returning from our progression last year. So it was like really cool yesterday on the river is like, yeah, we had 3 of our folks that were part of our progression last year that now have spent the year kayaking and like being more involved in the community and getting really good. It's been awesome to watch. And now we're back as volunteers the next year. And so while like the progression is sort of like, hey, let's learn this much, it's a really great launching point to then be able to stay connected to more in the community and keep learning. And it's cool now to see the like circular effect already in just 2 years of folks coming back and being part of it as volunteers in the future.
Amazing. I know that, you do these events all over the country. The progression was here this year. Do you plan on bringing this back to the same areas in the Pacific Northwest next summer?
Yeah, we absolutely do.
So can folks expect sort of like, if they're hearing about this and like, oh, I'd love to do this progression in the Columbia River Gorge, I'd love to do this in Puget Sound. Callie, it sounds like, they can mark it on their calendars for 2026. This is something they can definitely do again next summer.
Yeah, next spring we'll be announcing the application once again, and yeah, are excited to be continuing as long as like Diversify Whitewater gets its sport in the world. We will continue having folks that are excited about expanding the access and bringing this progression.
And Lily, on your end, as the founder of Diversify Whitewater, are there any like future plans for your organization as a whole? Maybe goals to expand to other places, or what do you have in the works?
That's a great question. Just real quick for the local area, I know you're Oregonian, but there is a Seattle Diversify Whitewater event coming up in September, September 6th through 7th in the greater Seattle area. Which is a totally free event. There's a one day that's held on Lake Sammamish, which I think is near Seattle, and then another day on the Snoqualmie River. And folks can participate in one day or both, and everything is totally free. And this is kind of how we got our footing in the Pacific Northwest region. And then that's the event that Callie first came to, and we're so excited how much just this region has been able to grow. A lot of our efforts across the country are volunteer driven. I'm a scientist by day and a Diversify Whitewater coordinator at other times of the day. And so, and we're all volunteers. We're a pretty small nonprofit, but we have a lot of passion. And so a lot of our efforts around the country are driven by awesome volunteers like Callie, and also from like outfitters or other organizations that have resources to hold free events, or if they don't, we are able to provide them with funding so that they can make their programming free. And so I think growing our events is a bit dependent on some of the funding that we're able to get for the year, but also on the interest of folks around the country being excited to hold an event like this in their area. And from our perspective, we can definitely work to get, opportunities like this to share our story, help us get our mission out there. And if people are excited, they can always get in touch. The best way to stay up to date on our events and things like that, and to hear about when the Pacific Northwest Paddling Progression application will be announced in the spring, will be to follow us on Instagram at Diversify Whitewater and to check out our website, diversifywhitewater.org.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much to you two for everything that you do and for bringing this to the Pacific Northwest. I'm sure a lot of folks are grateful to be able to have the opportunity to get out there on the rapids with you all. And thanks for coming on today to talk about it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Well, folks, that will do it for us for today. But until next time, you can watch our videos on the Oregonians YouTube channel and view all of our travel and outdoors coverage on OregonLive.com/travel, as well as HereIsOregon.com.
Please leave us a rating or review if you enjoy the show, and if you want to support this podcast as well as our local journalism, please consider a subscription to Oregon Live. You can find the details at OregonLive.com/subscribe. Also, if you're a fan of the show and you're interested in potentially sponsoring it, you can get in touch with our marketing people at advertise@oregonian.com. This episode of the show was produced by me alongside Jamie Hill, Teresa Mahoney, and Vicki Connor.
Stay safe and happy travels, everyone. Until next time, we leave you with this 10 seconds of Zen.